Hello and welcome to the Leaders in Supply Chain and Logistics podcast. I am your host, Radu, Palamariu, Group CEO of Velvet Global. Our mission is to connect the supply chain ecosystem by bringing forward some of the most interesting leaders in the industry. And it is my great pleasure to have with us today Steffen Lang, who is a member of the Executive Committee and the President of Operations for Novartis, where he leads a global team of over 20,000 associates committed to delivering and making high-quality medicines and solutions for all people all over the world. And every morning, he wakes up excited to dive into his work, driven by the mission to reimagine medicine and make a real difference in people's lives. Also, Steffen has a very interesting background. So he started in his career in R&D. He was the head of a laboratory and then ended up in manufacturing and ended up, obviously, now leading a significant operations and manufacturing and supply chain team all over the world. Steffen, pleasure to have you and thanks for joining us.
Nice to be with you, Radu.
Maybe to start with, curious to hear your career inflections, those moments which made the most difference now when you look back at the last 30 years and made you who you are today, a board member of one of the best pharma companies in the world. What were those inflection points for you?
Yeah, Radu, thank you. As you summarized, I started in research. I was passionate about continuing my technology work, which I did during my PhD. And then I found a great opportunity to join one of the predecessor companies of Novartis to continue what I was passionate about, to apply technology to solve scientific challenges. Doing that in a corporate research environment was exciting, but with time I realized that this was a bit far away from the application from a patient. I realized that what really drove me on the one hand is the curiosity to learn new things, but also then to see how this would be applied and make a difference on patients. And being in a research environment on technology, I was too far away. And then this was certainly a big inflection point for me, moving into development. More particular, I was in CMC development and got more and more responsibility. There I could really develop products for a purpose then to be applied at the patient. And this time, what stayed always with me is the curiosity, the eagerness to learn. And then I wanted to get closer and closer to the patient. And then what happened at the same time, Novartis as a company got more and more successful, more and more into biotechnology, and they needed somebody to bring together the needs of biosimilars, oncology biologics, and pharma biologics. And then I was asked to lead an effort to bring all of that together across the entire value chain from CMC development through manufacturing. And this was a wonderful experience and worked out reasonably well. And then this was basically my trajectory then into leading the global manufacturing network of Novartis, which is now a company fully focused on innovative medicines. You mentioned reimagined medicines, a lot of new technology work, and still the passion for technology and impact, now I have to say, because as an innovative medicines company, the impact we have on patients is real. And being able with my team to contribute to that is a motivation which, as you summarized, I really get up every morning excited and passionate to get on and to help together with my team to make an impact on patients' lives.
And look, I think the industry that you operate in is one where this sense of purpose, you're literally saving people's lives. You are helping patients all over the world. And at the same time, I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what you said, how in your own roles you came closer and closer to that customer, that patient, and in terms of the roles that you had. So my question is, whilst it's a purposeful and mission critical role, it's also your job as the leader of that team to kind of keep that sense of mission and purpose for your team. Are there some tips and tricks? Obviously, it's clear you're helping patients all over the world, but when you get into the day-to-day and the stress and KPIs and all of those stuff, sometimes we end up forgetting some things. So I was just wondering, how do you keep that sense of purpose at the heart of what you and your team does every day?
A couple of thoughts. First of all, yes, the sense of purpose is clear. And when I reflect about what we're doing today in manufacturing at Novartis as compared to what we did 10, 15 years ago, we are much closer now to the patient. So the impact we have is real on the shop floor, in the QC lab, and it has never been like this. And this is the reason, because of the advent of individualized therapies. What was 15 years ago science fiction, that one would take blood cells from a patient, ship them into a facility, do a manipulation, a genetic recoding of those cells, then multiply them and freeze them again and ship them back to the hospital to reinfuse. That's reality today with cell therapy products, with radioligand therapy products, individualized products where you produce a specific vial for a patient. And I think so. This helps, of course, to remind everyone in manufacturing how close they are to the patient, and that this purpose has a meaning. Huh? And that's certainly everywhere. And of course, telling that story, that's also leadership responsibility of myself and my team to remind people about the impact they have. And most importantly, as well, the level of complexity of these new therapies is so high that it's always a team effort, reminding everyone. And it can be the person in the warehouse has an equal contribution than the release authority in the quality organization to make sure that we can ship product. And this sense of a community as one team is another very important aspect. I always pay attention to when I'm talking with my teams and working with my team. Second part of it, of course, is in manufacturing, you can also say it's a strong simplification. We do the same over and over again. So, but every day we do it, we shall do it better.
Mm,
And now it's about the performance mindset as well to deliver. And here, I think works very well is to really make sure that we stay strong in our foundations. So we always look at our quality requirements. We operate in a regulated environment in pharma under GXP, work safety. Often we do things which are dangerous and not easy to be done. Reliability, most of our products have no replacement. They impact life in a positive way. Sometimes we cure cancer. So we need to be sure that we can deliver therapies at almost 100% service level, which is also pretty unique. And of course, we have an agenda for sustainability. We as a company have an agenda to get to net zero by 2040. This is also something we build in now into our foundations. And whilst we do all of that, which is not negotiable, then it's the topic of cost competitiveness. Because wherever we operate in a global environment, we need to be competitive against any local competitor in a country we basically supply our medications to. And this framework helps then to also have the right focus in the organization, against which then, of course, catalyzed by our people, by the skills, by their motivation and purpose, plus I think the tools we are using, technology, know-how, automation, robotics, this is the enablement then of delivering against those objectives on the short term, but also, of course, on the mid and long term.
mm. And I wanted to ask you, because indeed we are talking about future, like a few years ago, 5, 10, 15 years ago, we would never have thought that you end up in a situation where you have personalized, individualized medicine or treatment for a particular person. So we've come a long way, and the operational reality of making that happen and delivering that medicine or vial or whatever it might be, treatment to the patient is clearly hits you, because it's not something necessarily straightforward to do or that had been done before. So keeping it practical, I wanted to ask you if you can share one example of a situation where you faced operational challenge. What did you do? What was the outcome, and how did you measure the success afterwards?
Yeah, very good. And I think several examples come to my mind. And I think it starts off when you look into a therapy like an individualized cell therapy. Typically, this comes into production environment as a result of a very good clinical trial readout. So in a pivotal clinical trial, all of a sudden you have a wonderful result. And this defines then the fastest timelines to regulatory submission and approval. and in parallel, tech transfer is done. Now you have an individualized therapy where I remember very well debating and co-defining together with regulators how one would validate an individualized therapy. Because typically validation is you do 3 times the same. But if you have an individualized therapy, you will not have 3 times the same. It's very simple. So I think what helped here is, of course, there is this sense of urgency when you know you have a life-saving therapy, and then the co-design, the collaboration with regulatory authorities was very pragmatic. To always keep in mind, of course, compliance to regulations, to pay attention to safety of patients, to not risk anything. But that was certainly a big event and a big moment, this co-design. But it continues with radioligand therapies, which I think is, I would say, even the next level with regard to complexity, because those therapies, they're individualized, but you cannot produce them to stock because the moment you start producing, they lose activity. So
Yes.
you have a certain time window to deliver those medications to patients. And of course, you cannot basically miss this because there is a road construction or there is an airport which is closed or there's a hurricane. And of course, we have been confronted as pioneers to scale this technology for the first time globally with many of these events. And we have then learned out of it that we always need to have plan B, a plan C. We have now a global monitoring of GPS tracking of all of these supplies. So if you would watch it, it looks like the world map with a lot of small things moving. These are the thousands of radioligand therapy treatments, which, as we speak, move across the globe. And with that, we say oversight, risk mitigation, and heavily enabled through automation, digital innovation, we are able to deliver today globally above 99% customer service levels, even for those individualized therapies at global scale, which I think is again a testimony of what a purpose combined with the right skill and motivation can deliver with the right focus and technology.
That's fantastic. And oh, well, by the way, it's also needed because again with what you're dealing with, it's not like you're not an e-commerce delivery company, whether you get your socks or not. Okay, you
No,
can wait
no.
another day. I mean, this has to come when it's supposed to come, the person that it's supposed to be delivered. And I'm gonna go one level deeper with the question. So to achieve this almost 100% really percentage of accuracy, when you look back into your journey to get there, which I'm sure it was a difficult one, were there certain key points, key decisions that made it what it is and made this system flow and this supply chain
Yeah.
operation cycle really work as it is? And what were those points or processes or people or decisions that you would think made the most difference?
Yeah, look, I think it started a few years back when I actually started to become responsible for global manufacturing at Novartis, where part of my onboarding, I realized that as many other pharma companies, the organization was centered around technology centers, but not around products. And at the end, we deliver products to customers, but different steps of manufacturing are done in different facilities. And so early on, we established and introduced a product management team, which was basically looking at the horizontal axis of manufacturing. And this was, I think, one of the key success factors for further down the road
Mhm.
realizing this high customer service level. Those teams, they take care of the product, of the cost competitiveness journey, the reliability, all types of life cycle managements. And the first acid test was basically the pandemic, because all of a sudden we all realized how fragmented the world is and how disrupted geographies or pathways were. And one of the first recommendations of this product management team was to establish two parallel supply chains which are
Mm.
regionally separated. And this
Oh, wow.
allowed us during the pandemic to be at 99.9%. We were at higher levels than before the pandemic, despite having facilities really very close to the hotspots. You remember in Europe, a lot started in this famous location called Ischgl. 20 minutes away, we have our large facility in Tyrol where we have 3,000 people. And this facility, of course, was impacted as well by the pandemic, but through collaboration, through the right actions, we were able to deliver. And the same happened in Italy, where we also have close to Bergamo a large facility. And again, yes, dual supply chain, but also I have to say the motivation and the purpose of our people made it happen, because looking back, this was one of the key success factors. So certainly this helped us. And even now today, as you see everywhere in the world, there is disruption. We see also more extreme climates happening. We saw the blockage of the Suez Canal and all of that, where we basically get confirmation that our approach to dual supply chain, having the right inventory levels at the different intermediate steps, help us to secure these very high customer service levels, which I believe for the type of portfolio we have, we need to be as close as possible to 100%.
Yes. And I want to ask you, because it takes courage and decision making to change things, right? So you were saying that you went from one model which was more technology focused to a more product focused type of an
Mhm.
approach, horizontal. I want to probe because a lot of companies are, I mean, especially today, you gotta change, you gotta have this flexibility to change things
Mhm.
quite fast. So what was it that helped you? That takes a lot of influencing to the other stakeholders, yeah, because they're used to a certain way of doing things, and now you're suggesting a new way. There were a couple of things in this process that you must have done well. So again, looking for that, 20% that made 80% of the difference. If I were to get you to reflect, what were those things that helped you make this
Mhm.
successful through the organization?
Look, I think it starts, I believe, with the need to deliver product to patients. This 100% objective and to prevent that this can be disrupted. And then when you realize that and you compare it to the status quo of the performance before I took over, there were certainly areas of improvement. And then I think what always is intrinsic in me is the curiosity and the realization that things can be done. And I also believe, especially in the last few years, with so and so many things ongoing in this world, which you can always look at as a threat, but I believe as well there's always an opportunity, and staying ahead of the change curve has always been my philosophy. Let's stay focused on our mission. What can we do to continue to deliver above and beyond to our outcomes? And then what does it take to get there? And this has always been driving us. And then, yes, it takes courage. It takes the ability to articulate that vision in a way to take an organization with you, because change is always something where extra energy is required. So people they need to understand what is in there for them. And I believe if you have an organization which is so much anchored around the purpose to deliver medications to patients where often no alternative exists, this together gave us the energy to work through those changes. And it's part of the agility now built in our organization. And I'm just finishing a conversation with my leadership team here about what we've accomplished this year and how we move on. And the theme is never settle. Never settle means, yeah, it's a different way of saying operational excellence, that we always want to stay ahead. We want to always deliver better to our customers, to our patients, that they always get what they need on time. And for us, enlarging access means also to be cost competitive, because if we can produce in a more cost competitive way whilst delivering, it also enables that as a company we can invest more into R&D, which sustains and catalyzes also this company, because there's high risk on R&D, and for that we as a company need the funds which we need to free up also from operations to have this investment to have the 9 years to have a new treatment available, to have that development time, but also to be able to afford the high attrition rate where we have still only 1 out of 10 molecules entering the clinics makes it to the market. And for that, we need to have that big investment where we as operations play a pivotal part as well to enable that and through that also sustain the company.
Yes. And I on that never settled point, we are at this time where, well, a little bit buzzword heavy. AI is everywhere, but clearly it is a technology that very likely, if not certainly, will transform and is transforming already how we do things. And then, of course, you have a lot of others: automation, machine learning, robotics, and you have a plethora of tech. It's almost like for whatever problem we have, almost everything, there is a technology either existing or soon to exist. Now, I want to invite you to make an exercise of looking ahead, right? In this never settle type of mindset. How do you see using, and I'm sure in your team you have many projects, AI and all this tech in 3 to 5 years, and what will it enable you? What would be some highlights that you think it will enable you to do at Novartis to push things much forward from an operations perspective?
Yeah, Radu, I think, yes, you're right. There's unlimited opportunities of technology. And I think to portray a picture of the future is always good to also step back for a moment and look back. And when I compare how we produce today as compared to how we did it 10, 15 years ago, of course, it's a different world. And automation, robotics play a very key part in moving materials through facilities, enabling seamless data flow through facilities. And of course, with that, I'm coming back to what I said earlier on, ensure quality, work safety, reliability, sustainability, and cost competitiveness. So 10 years ago, we had isolated work centers. Today, these are integrated end-to-end lines where at high speed product like syringes, vials are produced. And we augment this where it makes sense with artificial intelligence. And I give you a couple of examples, and this also shows you then how we approach it and what the outlook for the future could be. That, for example, in automated optical control, which is something where when you have a aseptically produced sterile medication, you want to make sure that there's no particulate in there, because when you inject it into the body, that's a regulatory requirement. And in the past, the human eye was the best mechanism to detect it. So we had many people spending time looking at these types of products in some sort of in-process control. This is now done by cameras and types of online measures. However, there's still a reject rate, and sometimes it's difficult to distinguish for a camera a particulate from an air bubble. Now we have models, and now we have this installed in several of our facilities, where basically at a much higher accuracy and efficiency than with the naked eye, these machines learn how to distinguish and get better every run they are doing. So that's how AI makes quality better, but also efficiency, of course. And there are many examples in biotechnology, in other packaging activities where automation robotics are augmented by AI, which I think will continue like this. These are use cases which often take time to develop. It's not like Copilot and you play around with it because it's part of a regulated environment. But I believe it will help over the next 5 to 10 years really to take a lot of the burdensome work away where human intervention was required. It will never make this disappear because decision making still will be required by the experts. But I think it will allow us to elevate the way we produce to a different level, especially for the new therapies where we often are still in the beginning of maturing those technologies. And with regard to data management, data handling, reporting, knowledge management, it will be a different ballgame. I think report writing, complaint management, I
Yes.
think it will be a seamless workflows. We have for our operations part in Novartis, we have an objective by 2028 to be above 85% of automation. Automation augmented by AI where meaningful. and we're in a good trajectory. As we speak, we have 140 and more use cases underway. So it's a big undertaking, but I believe it will help us with regard to outcomes to become even better, more predictable, and it's perfectly fitting to our never settle attitude. And maybe one important aspect, because there's a lot of hype around AI, and a word of caution that we would never do AI for the sake of AI. And there are a lot of examples where this doesn't go well. We always attach it to a business process excellence topic, which once we have clear business processes, we automate where feasible and we augment with AI where it makes sense. And the recipe to make this successfully is that we fully embed this into operation, and the global process owners, those are the ones who take the decision on the tool used for automation, and where it makes sense, we do AI. Because AI for the sake of AI is not sustainable. It makes, but there is a risk with this hype in around us that everyone runs now behind after AI. But for us, it's always important. What problems do we want to solve, and how does it fit into the landscape of business process excellence, data management excellence, then automation, and then where it makes sense, augmented by AI.
Yeah. Moving to the last segment of our sharing session, Stefan, I wanted to ask you if you were to give a piece of sharing to the younger generation, and I'll angle it from this perspective of something that you wish you knew when you started your career, and after all these years and experiences and so on, proved to be extremely valuable. What would be that one thing that you wish somebody had told you 35 years ago when you started your career?
Yeah, that's an easy one, because I think I started my career believing that manufacturing would be boring. Supply chain, I was excited around technology, and it's the opposite, because this is the most exciting, most technology eager place where you can really do so much good in the direction this needs to move through technology. So certainly the advice would be get into it, make your own experiences, and then you will see that something which may look boring from the outside, inside is full of surprises, full of opportunity, and full of excitement.
Love it. I was sharing actually this, I'll chip in. Happened last night. I was with a friend and his, partner in a large firm, a consulting firm, and he was asking me, how did I end up in supply chain? I said, and recruitment. So I said, okay, both completely random stuff, right? So, I mean, nobody really wants to be a
Mm.
headhunter. And I didn't even know what supply chain meant, to be fair, when I started 15
Yeah.
years ago. Over time, hopefully I learned a thing or two. But what I told him is like, incidentally, what I discovered through this community and a network of supply chain professionals, that I discovered friendship, and I discovered a lot of people that are extremely practical, that get stuff done, that are hidden heroes in a lot of most companies. They really deliver the goods to our doorsteps and make things happen. And in your case, medicine. And there's indeed a whole world out there. I mean, the factories of today, and you would know it, but many people that are outside wouldn't know it, myself included, 15 years ago. I mean, they're incredibly developed. They are cleaner than sometimes an operation table in the hospital. The sophistication, the technologies, the embedment between hardware and software is just incredible. And on top of that, to your point, and I wanted to emphasize, sometimes competition is less, right? To make it also practical to the ones that are listening to us, because also the consultant friend of mine was telling me that, look, because he's in supply chain manufacturing, as opposed to being in tech or financial services or other sexy or seen sexy practices, he has a lot less competition. So, in the impact that you can make, and the real value that you can deliver for the company is huge. So I just wanted to also add that angle to it, and I'll pause for a second also to let you maybe chip in. But I thought that's also one other way to to encourage people that this is really an exciting place to be.
Yeah, look at it, and I think it has changed a lot over the past years. And I think, again, an inflection point was the pandemic, where people realized that it cannot be for granted that products are available. It cannot be for granted that a global supply chain delivers in every country as predicted medication, for example. I'm not so sure about the topic of not having competition in a pharmaceutical environment. It's rather, I think, the opposite, that there is, of course, pressure on healthcare cost. There is, as I said, for a innovative medicines company, there is a requirement to have a very significant margin to enable the high-risk business we are in. 90% of the R&D spend is investing in failure. Not failure because somebody did something wrong, but failure to learn because biology and diseases are not yet fully understood, and there is a continuous investment required. And I think as leaders, of course, you see companies who, when they are not able to deliver their revenues and their margin, they cut into R&D. That's an easy way in a pharma world to pretend to be successful. We never did that, and we will never do so. And that means that an operations unit at Novartis is always under pressure to deliver, not only on product, on reliability and quality, but also on cost competitiveness, because otherwise this margin will shrink. And we need, with the advances in technology in the biomedical research, we need rather more margin than lower to continue to have this outflow. So, but I can understand from the outside in how you can come to that perspective. But I think never settle means also we need to be competitive in every supply point. And when I have a discussion with my responsible site heads for the manufacturing units, their unit cost needs to be leading. And if it's not leading in a global comparison, it needs to be at least, we need to have a plan over the next 18, 24 months to get to the leading position. This is the way how to catalyze also the right competitiveness, because when you produce in a network for global, you need to be competitive in every country your
Yes.
product is offered. Which and regardless how you produce, and sometimes there is high labor cost, there is lower labor cost, but at the end, the outcome needs to be a competitive cost, and we can achieve that through technology. We can achieve that through different ways of working, through yield improvement, and so on. But that's part of the exciting journey as well. But very competitive, I can tell you.
No, thanks for the nuance. Well received. Stefan, it's been a pleasure. Great conversation, many great examples and sharings. Keep reinventing medicine and making people healthy all over the world. And really, really appreciate your time today that you took with us.
Thank you so much, Radu, for having me, and I enjoyed it very much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Once again, this is Radu Palamariu. Thank you so much for listening to this Leaders in Supply Chain podcast episode. If you're listening it on iTunes, Spotify, or any other channel, we'd love if you leave us a review. And of course, share this with anyone you think might enjoy it. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.